So we're going to go ahead and start off with poverty is good, actually. And we're going to try very hard to remember to do all the different things we're supposed to do right now. All right. One of the biggest stories is Boeing. We all know that every chance that companies can take to reward their board members and stock shareholders, they will use that money instead of doing anything that has to do with safety. We saw that door fly off the Boeing plane last week, which was insane. And then there were all these articles on how Boeing paid themselves out instead of investing in safety. They offshored so many of their different components, so they're not even being overseen by any one regulatory agency. The Lever, amazing source. Boeing and Spirit execs paid themselves $800 million and spent $68 billion on dividend buybacks while laying off workers and refusing safety investments experts say were necessary. 1 year of buybacks was more than the cost of key safety upgrades.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this is what capitalism does. Once a business has made it, it's all about, okay, let's leverage our risk factor for profits as much as possible. And then, they might take a hit economically from their stock, short term.
Right.
But even that, it's a long-term benefit of, what's it going to really cost them when they cut all these corners. I mean, businesses get sued like crazy.
Yep.
And it's all factored in the calculation of what are the odds of us getting sued? How much will we lose?
Right.
None of it is to make the business better, to benefit the customer better.
Yep.
None of it.
Well, because the plane did it explode a couple years ago, a Boeing plane, and they were fined, and then they were fined. So that's always factored in. And that's just the cost of doing business, as you said, like lawsuits. And then argued their way into self-regulation. Who else is better to do it than they are? And the Biden administration, of course, helped them do that. So here it is. Documents show that after the 737 crashes, the Biden administration's SEC blessed Boeing's execs move. Oh my God, Boeing execs move to block an initiative to require the company's board to have more members with backgrounds experience in engineering, aerospace, and or aviation. So when you have people who are on your board who know nothing about the product that they are making money off of and investing in, as you just said, their sole focus is money. That's it. And it's the same with everything. It's like COVID killing off the working class, first responders or, frontline workers. And at a certain point, we're not going to have enough people to do all the jobs. AI won't be able to do it. AI cannot buy the products being put out by these companies, but that's like too far down the road. All they care about right now is lining their pockets.
Yeah, and it's another example of another problem, which is the revolving door with politicians and regulatory agencies and lobbyists. So, if you want to be on the board regulating Boeing, you probably are either a politician already, or you've worked your way up through lobbying for them, or in some way the people that they get that are regulating them now, more and more come from the industry themselves, come from the company themselves. It's just absolutely corrupt on all levels. And more oversight is obviously needed, but capitalism will never allow us to oversee these companies more in the future. It's only getting worse massively, like exponentially.
Yeah. I mean, which is another reason to tax the rich. Like, I know there's there's actually really not tension between like that philosophy and the MMT crowd at all. It's just, there is no democracy when there are people whose wealth so far outweighs most of the rest of the country or the world, and they have such an enormous influence on getting exactly what they want. And so it's no longer a democracy, as we see in so many different areas of our life, that the only people who really matter are the people with the money. And they will kill their own grandparents to make a buck. I mean, that's just like, that is our only religion in this country. It's the, praying to the green god, the money gods. That is it. However, in one wonderful little button to this story, Blinken, who is just at the, oh wow, there's just my phone ringing midstream. Blinken was stranded at Davos because the Boeing 737 broke down, which, couldn't happen to a better person. If only it were some, disgusting place where he had to be stranded, where he would really feel some pain. But I'm sure he'll be well taken care of.
It really does sum it up. He's on his way to Davos, which is the bougie, where all the mega rich get together, and it's like the Dr. Evil meetup, pretty much. Which we should pull that video. I mean, everybody's probably seen it, of the guy there actually speaking to everyone at Davos.
Oh my God, he's so good. I'm gonna forget his name right now, but yeah, who and then he went on Tucker Carlson and said that he was part of the problem also. But he's like he's a historian. I think he's from Denmark.
Say anything.
I know, I could say anything. Yeah. Sure, 99%. And I can see his name flashing. Rutger? No. All right, I'm not gonna do it now. But anyway, yeah, fantastic. They'll never let him back there ever. Anyway, more great news in the economy. The U.S. Department of Labor found that over 208,000 workers are owed at least $163 million in back pay. The department's trying to help you get that money. I mean, this is why, and I don't know if you saw, they just Hochul, the governor of New York, just said she was going to invest like $40 million more in cops to patrol Walgreens and, retail stores that claim, and then they admitted, by the way, but claimed that there had been this whole like epidemic of shoplifting. Then they sort of like, walked that back and said they were wrong about that. But the truth is even if they were right, hire some more employees. Like, hire more employees. Why are you hiring cops? Hire more employees to walk around, get to know your customers. Let's also invest in people so they don't need to steal baby formula and, necessary product. I mean, there's so many different ways to deal with this. The worst way to deal with it is to give more money to cops. But yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures around. I saw one today. It was a sign on the self-checkout, like, this is closed because of all the thefts and the bad people. Thank you for not being one of them, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
It's like, it's a failed, it's a failed system. This is where technology is not helping us, really.
Right.
In the long term, it might help you get out through your checkout in 30 seconds or something.
Right.
But that's a job behind that gone. And there's no safety net for any of these jobs is the problem.
Right.
There's no, where do these people go who get outsourced because of these jobs? But the bottom line is these businesses, Walmart included, Walgreens, excuse me. They were caught lying to their shareholders, and to the public, that this theft was a major problem, and they were just using it as a way to try to save another couple $1 million every year.
Yeah, by claiming bankruptcy, right? It's another government bailout, basically.
Right. But the public is so susceptible to all this propaganda. They've heard this, that everybody thinks, like they always do, we got to give the police some more money. That's the bottom line.
That's the answer to everything. And that's because that police union and their lobbyists, I mean, they're working overtime with the, small businesses in every city to get more funding for that, to get more cops, to get more bailouts from government. I mean, that's the whole scam. And it'd be much harder to do if we were aware that I think violent crimes are like at a record low over the last several decades, actually. And wage theft is a much bigger problem in this country than shoplifting.
Well, don't worry, because they set up a website instead of just like doing it, putting in hiring an IT guy to do a little query. Maybe the guy makes $40,000 on the project, and then they just send checks to the people that have money coming to them.
Yeah.
You have to magically know that you're owed money and go to some website.
Right. And start filling out paperwork. It's just going to be a bureaucratic nightmare, which is, that's every neoliberal solution, in addition to cops, is start filling out your paperwork, means test it. Do you have the receipts to show? I mean, how are you even going to prove that? You have to have kept all of your time cards, balance it against all of your pay stubs. I mean, and they know, of course, they know what they owe you. They've actually hired somebody, probably from McKinsey, to figure out a way to cheat you out of the money. So they know exactly what they owe you, actually. But
of course they do.
Yeah. It's like, it's like filling out your taxes.
Exactly. Taxes.
They know.
Taxes, it should just be, here's what you owe. You want to dispute it one way or another. You want to, file where you have some breaks and have some rebates coming to you and stuff. But they shouldn't have to have us get a W-2 at all anymore. Like that's
none of that.
Ridiculous
it's ridiculous
thing to.
Of course it is. And even having to like pay for services like from TurboTax and all these different places, they have lobbying groups that have made this process so much more complicated than it has to be to justify a whole level of management.
Absolutely. It's completely intentional. And it's because those groups lobbied Congress to not have taxes being something you file for free.
Yep.
Which is why on the state level, it was free with a lot of the services still, because it's a federal mandate versus a state mandate,
right.
In some situations.
Right. All right. Well, here is a good story. Burger King worker awarded, ready for this, a backpack, a movie ticket, no +1, and a Starbucks cup after never missing a day in 27 years. So that's what Burger King, the company, gave to him. But he did get to buy his first home with $446,000 in donations. But again, it's like, that's not the way that's supposed to actually happen.
It's a feel-good story that is defending the system. It's almost like, but then the church gave the guy money, and so we don't need social programs because everybody came up and gathered this money.
I mean, never missing a day of work in 27 years is all like something is massively wrong if that happens anyway, right? Like how does that ever happen?
Oof. I mean, I feel, look, we're taught to struggle and strive and go to work sick was always the thing we were taught forever. And now, if you tell me you had COVID 78 times but you went 27 years, you went in with COVID to work.
Thank you for showing up. Yep. And we know that they're doing, I mean, we'll get to that when we get to COVID, but they're actually telling people just to come to school sick with COVID anyway. I don't see where it is, but the flip side of that super feel good story is that a 16-year-old, and now I thought I had put it up here, but okay, I guess it got kicked out along with me. A 16-year-old who was killed in a meat packing, poultry packing plant, 16 years old, should not be operating that machinery anyway, was sucked in and killed. That plant provides Chick-fil-A with a lot of its chicken, but they were fined some like miserably low amount of money, which, as we said, is just factored into the cost of doing business. I can't find it, but anyway. And that's a job where I would love for AI to take over. They say that AI will affect 40% of jobs and will probably worsen inequality. It's crucial that countries build social safety nets to mitigate the impact on workers, says Kristalina Georgieva. And that's the thing that I think so many people who had sort of rose-colored glasses on thought AI would do, is get rid of these mindless, thankless, dangerous jobs. But at the same time, we, of course, have to provide some kind of social safety net, minimum basic income, guaranteed housing. Like, if that could free people up not to have to do those kinds of jobs, but still have a dignified life, that'd be amazing.
It would, but it's just not in capitalism's nature to do any of that. It's just to exploit workers more, provide less of a. We saw the safety net. Homelessness went down dramatically during the pandemic because the federal government spent all this money on programs to put homeless people into hotels and rooms, and it made a huge difference. And they did it because it was a spreader event, with a lot of people, and they were panicked about it. So they did that, and it actually had a massive impact on homelessness, which shows you that it's not just drug use. It's not just mental illness. It's like, even when there's drug use and mental illness, if they can have a shelter, they're going to take a shelter. And
that's safe.
Fucking sense. But
I know. Yeah, they love to, it's always like the chicken and the egg, and of course there are some people who have, some mental issues or drug issues or alcohol issues, but they deserve homes also, as we all know. And we never know, again, like, did that come because you're working 3 jobs and you're not making rent and you lose your car and then you lose your kid? And there's it is such violence to lose your home. It truly is social murder. We know that homeless people obviously have much higher rates of early deaths. Even just the struggle with money is, it's life-shattering. It is really a horrible way to have to be forced to live. And it's a choice by our leaders. So
it's a choice by our leaders, and it's because it affects them way less than their families are not as affected. They may have a kid that gets on drugs and has a problem, and they may have to, tough love cut them off or something like that. That might happen.
Right.
But but that kid has a safety net that poor kids don't have. Without a family that, if you're already in come from a family that's economically okay, whatever your struggle in those areas are, you're more likely to get through it all because you have the safety nets of all those.
You can get into good programs. You're never going to have to. Yeah. There's
even if you're a complete fuck up, and that's what I mean.
Yes, there is a very different reality for people who are. I'm sorry. Now I'm trying to look at all these. I look at all these comments, and I'm just saying, people who have that safety net, whether it's their family or a society. You look at some of these Scandinavian countries where there is guaranteed housing, and they're not fancy houses, but I feel like that's been sold, that part of the American dream. I think we talked about this a few months ago when I had COVID and I was sick and really couldn't even get online, and I just kept watching TV Land or comedy, I don't even know, but whatever it was sitcoms from the early 2000s, late 1990s, and people lived in normal homes. Many of the main characters were working class. They talked about struggling for money. They even talked about, union strikes and things, and their homes looked so normal. And now you don't see anybody whose home isn't sort of aspirational for the rest of us on regular TV, unless they're the criminal on the cop show.
Well, no, anytime I watch TV and I see these poor people that are trying to show you, they're living in bigger places than I am. The difference is they always make the walls dirty. Right. They make it look like dirty and filthy and like they're trashy. It's they're not taking care of their place. But the size of the place is just blows my mind. I'm like, I wish I could live in this place that this poorest person you're showing on TV had.
Yeah. The struggle.
But I did want to go back to the AI for just a second, because I saw this is what I've been worried about for a long time, is that you can get a robot that can essentially act as a human and learn tasks. And once that cost goes down so much, like now it's $40,000 for these robots that will go pick up a cup of coffee and they're making espresso. And they have a shop in Seattle that is all robotic now. And so, the cost to an employer for something like that, $40,000. Well, maybe the worker's making $40,000 in a year, But then in the year 2, they don't have to pay anybody for that
That's
job.
right. And there's no benefits. They don't need a time off. They don't need to take breaks.
Yeah,
They don't call in sick. Yeah.
And they go out of business, and that robot is still valuable.
That's
It
right.
hasn't lost much value
right.
to them. So the
Yep.
assets, which are they're writing off as tax liabilities, it's a real risk I wouldn't say unskilled, but to, people who have to be in that position or whatever.
Right.
It's a job that should be somebody can come in, we'll train you, and you can do it. Those kind of jobs are not going to fly anymore.
Right. And again, well, first of all, I think, that will actually really detract from so many people's experiences. I don't know that we have it so much here in the US, but one of the things I feel like whenever people go to Europe or other places too, I'm sure, but I feel it so much having lived in Rome and being born there, is that, that thing of like walking into the alimentari and talking to the person who knows you, or going to get your cafe and like having people know who you are and talk a little bit. And that sort of social dynamic of community is just being chipped away more and more in this country, especially, wherever, every city is a driving city, right? Like we have to really fight against those things that kind of dehumanize us.
That's the important part, is like, as curious as I would be to see that coffee shop, I would never give them $1, and we can't give them $1.
Yeah.
Because they're
making a choice that's detrimental.
A universal basic income, if we had a housing guarantee, if everyone had health care, sure. But knowing that this is a job being replaced, don't support anything that's replacing a job. Yes,
100%. Okay. This, yes, we've seen it. I think we had a couple.
Thank you.
Yeah, there it says Victoria's Secret is using AI models out of work, makeup, hair artists, lighting, camera persons out of work, 100%. Also retouching people who
they're influencers now, and they're influencers getting paid to model clothing and whatnot. Yep. They're complete fake personas, top to bottom. Yep.
They don't complain about diets. They don't drink too much in order to stay skinny or take, Adderall or whatever the hell. They're just easy. You don't have to put up with any of their personality. It's so disgusting. Yes, they are trying to replace anybody who gets in the way of a fast beeline to the money. And then, this was just announced. And it's interesting. So Variety announced this last week. AI generated George Carlin drops a comedy special. As one of the 2 leading journals out here in Los Angeles covering the entertainment industry, there could have been more of a descriptive attitude in the headline for that article, because that's appalling. His daughter is incredibly unhappy. And, so now she's probably going to have to go fight legal battles, who I don't know if she has the money to do that when you're going to be fighting a studio that has billions of dollars for your own father's actual words and artistic output. So that is our future.
And the tough part legally is that, you need a tort. Who's harmed by this? She's harmed by it probably. And then you've got some people like that, but he's not around to be impacted financially by this move.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, the labor unions that were supposed to protect us on this have really screwed the pooch. And they just did, there is a voice actors company that is all AI generated, and they just broke a deal with some studio, and that way voice actors are going to be able to sign up, and you're allowed to say no. You don't have to condone it, but who's going to do that? So every time a voice actor gets a job now, they can sign something that says you can use my words, my voice, to generate AI. And if you say no, you probably won't even get a call back, or you definitely won't get the job. And so they are now going to have an enormous trough of voices to,
Right.
I mean, they're going to put a whole group out of work.
So the only people that will get voice work in the future are the celebrities who will attribute their name to the project, and they're going to do some cost benefit analysis. If we hire Kevin Hart to do the voice, we'll get so many views, but
nobody else really matters. And they sort of did that anyway, like during the actor strike in the late 90s. It wasn't as long as this past one, but that's when you really saw, it used to be sort of an anomaly when a huge actor did a commercial. It was sort of thought to be beneath them.
Pixar kind of changed that, I think.
Well, yeah, and because they were allowed to do commercials, so they started doing commercials. Well, if you can get a huge actor to do a commercial, then for a lot of working actors, they all want, every brand wants to have a star ambassador. And it didn't used to be that way, but so now, almost every commercial, even things that are like sort of cable, really sort of low rent, have big stars in them.
Well, the effect of that is it's just more pushing to the 1%, basically. So the rich people are going to get hired, which means they don't have the budget for all the other stuff. So they're going to AI the crap out of the other stuff.
Capitalism, baby.